Hey, Flo here, and this is my impression of an easily overwhelmed person finding out about Progressive Service Centers. A whole center devoted to helping me if I get into an accident? Oh, it's too much! You drop your car off, they manage repairs, and if you need a rental, they give you one on site? Holy baloney macaroni, what will they think of next?
Taking the hassle out of making a claim. Now that's Progressive.
I forgot how to breathe! Does the air go in my nose and out my mouth, or the other way around? Ah!
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Service centers not available in all areas. You have a choice of repair facilities.
Deborah Harry has become the first on a solo album.
My baby has problems. I think it's quite unique. She saves lots of money, not brushing all her feet. But I never buy her makeup or lipstick that is red. Cause she looks so good without it. Plus my baby's got no hair. Got no hair. 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 No hair. We go out to the movies to have a real good time. And everybody stares cause her body looks so fine. They give me dirty looks as if my baby's cold and dead. I tell them that she's full of life. She just ain't got no hair. Got no hair. 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 No hair.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Inscriber Media Network. The world premiere is upon us. My name is Nick Ficarelli. I am the Mad Scientist of Sports, and you are now officially in the Mad Scientist Sports Lab, courtesy of the Inscriber Media Network. And with me, as always, is my trusty apprentice. You may know him as Stat Boy, but he's graduated to doctor these days. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Andrew Blukov.
Welcome to the new generation of media network, the Inscriber Media Network. This is going to be a lot of fun, Nick. I'm looking forward to it. We got a whole slew of shows already lined up on this network. We're just getting started.
Absolutely, absolutely. Later in the show, ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you guys the full lineup and what a lineup we have. It's like an all-star network. Because let me tell you something, we're not only going to talk sports, we're also going to talk, these shows are going to be talking some pop culture, going to be talking some movies, some music. You may dabble a little bit of politics, although right here on the Mad Scientist Sports Lab, you're going to get nothing but pure, unadulterated sports talk. And what a way to get started to have my first two guests right here on the Inscriber Media Network. First off, you know him as the host of one of the hosts of Patriots 4th and 2. He is part of the Boston Sports Mafia threesome of Thomas Murphy, Steve Balistrieri, and the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Russ Goldman. Russ, how you doing?
Guys, thanks for having me on tonight. I look forward to talking some sports with you.
Hey, absolutely. And also joining us, ladies and gentlemen, you probably read him from here to there. He's on Bleacher Report. He's on Fantasy Sharks. He has his own show right here on Blog Talk Radio. And this is a guy who, during Super Bowl week, had his face pretty much plastered all over the place, especially on Sirius XM Radio. I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, he's one of the brightest football minds I know. Give it up for Gary Davenport. Gary, how you doing tonight?
Oh, doing great, Nick. Glad to be here.
Well, we had a wild and wacky week in sports, and I mean, pretty much in football. Let's start with the news that came out just a couple of days ago with Greg Hardy. Everybody knows that he was suspended for 10 games by Lord Roger Goodell, and it went on, the NFLPA obviously appealed, and it went to an arbitrator, and it was reduced. The suspension was reduced from 10 games to 4 games, in which the arbitrator said you can't just retroactively, do whatever. This happened before you changed the policy, so he's only going to get 4 games. Needless to say, there was some uproar about it, and there's been a lot of debate about it because, as Andrew was telling me before the show, you had a kicker that had maybe a little too much to drink, and he gets 4 games, and yet you have someone who beats the living snot out of somebody, and they only get 4 games. So let me start with you, Andrew. Do you think that the arbitrator got it right on this one because, technically speaking, he is correct that you can't retroactively do anything, or do you think the arbitrator should have said the punishment fit the crime?
Well, the punishment didn't fit the crime, but you got to play by the rules in which they're given. And as we were talking about before the show started, I think the point was excellently made. You can't arbitrarily, retroactively go back and change rules. Hardy's initial violation happened on the original platform of the penalties and the rules, so you have to use those original platforms to levy the decision. So when they when the Ginger Hammer dropped said hammer and gave a 10-game suspension under old rules, the arbitrator had to go with what the old system was, and the old system did not support it. Look what they did with Ray Rice. Had a very minimal penalty initially. I have to give the arbitrator credit. They did it right. It's not the popular choice, but it was the correct decision. Unfortunately, we wish the correct decision was not the correct decision.
Gary, your thoughts?
I think it's one of those situations where the law and justice are two entirely different things. I mean, obviously, I don't think anyone's going to disagree that he should have gotten more than 4 games for what he, I guess, allegedly did, although he was convicted by a North Carolina jury. But the policy was the policy, and it's been changed now. Like you said, you can't go back and rewrite rules just to please the public. So, I mean, I'm sure the Dallas Cowboys and Greg Hardy are happy about it. It's big for their pass rush this year, but I would have liked to have seen the punishment be stricter.
And Russ?
My big issue isn't with the ruling. Again, I understand what you guys are saying. I don't think that Greg Hardy should be in the league. But, again, this now is a situation that it is. And if I'm a fan of the Dallas Cowboys, I wouldn't want him on my team. And that's just the way I look at it. I look at it as a fan. I don't want this player on my team. I would not want him on the New England Patriots. I'm still disgusted that the Patriots had a player that, again, committed murders. Again, that really has disgusted me beyond belief. I would not want him on the New England Patriots. It even bothered me to hear fans talk about it. So I look at this strictly as a fan. I wouldn't want him on my team. If I'm an owner of every team in the NFL, just do not hire this guy. I don't care what he does for you as a player. Don't hire him. That's how you create change. Don't hire this guy. But that's not the reality. The reality is someone did hire him, and good luck to Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. But I'm actually disgusted that the Cowboys actually gave this guy a job. That's where my disgust really belongs.
Well, the difference between this and, say, Ray Rice, who's still looking for work, is easy. Ray Rice's last year in the NFL, he averaged less than 3 yards a carry. Greg Hardy's last full year in the NFL, he had 15 sacks. If you can play, someone's going to hire you.
I'm not going to disagree with you there, but it doesn't make it right. It absolutely positive. You're right. It's a results business. He will give you results. But if you're asking me, again, if you're looking the difference between right and wrong, and again, we're not really talking about that, but for me, the difference between right and wrong, don't give this guy a job. That's just the way I look at it.
I gotta say that I actually do agree with Russ on this one, because I look at it like this. I mean, Gary, I understand, Ray Rice had a really crappy year, and, he's looking for work and everything like that, but Ray Rice is someone that still can possibly be effective in the right offense, but nobody wants to touch him because it was a domestic violence dispute. Same thing with Greg Hardy. Why Greg Hardy gets a job, understandable, 15 sacks, but still, I mean, you're going to build. What do you call it? It just doesn't make any. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. I don't like it. I mean, he's still going to be suspended for the first 4 games, and if you look at the schedule for the first 4 games, those are 4 big games that Dallas actually has. It's not an easy 4 games, so it could hurt them. But we'll see what happens. I mean, I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if this, if this saga is still not over, because knowing DeMaurice Smith and the NFLPA, they'll still want the Ginger Hammer's head on a silver platter and somewhere along the line. And speaking of DeMaurice Smith and the Ginger Hammer and their lovely relationship that they've had the last couple of years, it seems to me now that the NFLPA is actually looking into filing a complaint against the NFL again. I know, ladies and gentlemen, shocker, but now they're talking about collusion. And when I heard collusion, I was like, what in God's name could the NFL now be colluding about now? Sure enough, the NFL is colluding the NFLPA is saying that there was collusion that NFL teams were not allowed to talk contracts with Dez Bryant and Demaryius Thomas. Why, you may ask? Because the 2 best wide receivers out there in free agency right now, who both have yet to sign their franchise tender, did not get any contract offers from any other team. Leads me to believe, there may be some truth in this, but then again, who in their right mind would want to pay a wide receiver to start with about $13 million a year, which means you are going to pretty much crush your cap? Gary, do you think there was collusion, or do you think, teams are just being smart and they don't want to pay franchise money for a wide receiver these days?
No, probably a little bit of both. And to me, honestly, this is a nonsense. The players aren't going to be able to get anywhere with this. The NFLPA likes to pretend maybe that it has a little bit of power, but it doesn't have any. They got what little bit they had was taken away in the last CBA. So this is one of those things that will go away in a week.
And what about you, Russ?
Well, Nick, I'm a fan of the New England Patriots, so you know that again, the Patriots don't pay that type of money for a wide receiver, and because again, it is more about the team. And like you said, to pay that type of money for a wide receiver, I think is a mistake. I mean, there are certain positions where you have to pay top dollar. Wide receiver, just for me, is not one of them. Along with running back, I just don't pay top dollar for that. But there are going to be teams that are going to do that, and again, a team like the Dallas Cowboys, a team like that would be apt to do that. And again, I understand why this is being talked about, because it is about money. But if you're looking at it from a cap perspective, you don't pay a wide receiver, I think, top dollar like that. You got to spread it around. That's just not where you should be spending your money. The big chunk of your money. But that's just me.
And we actually have another special guest, ladies and gentlemen, and if there's someone that, is a peer of mine in this industry and someone that I personally look up to, and sure enough, he also happens to be the host of a show that everybody knows as Sports Infusion, actually one of the co-hosts, and Thursday nights right here on the Media Inscriber Network, he happens to be bringing back one of the top shows that I really love to hear in Fantasy Jam. And I am honored that he actually took the time to come on the show and voice his words of wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, the fish himself, Andrew Fishbane.
Thank you so much for those amazing words and kind introduction. But I got to tell you, I wasn't here originally to voice my opinion. I wanted to just come on and say congratulations. This network could not have gotten kicked off with a better show. I'm honored to be a part of the network and to be now a part of your show, Nick. It is fantastic. And I just wanted to say I know you're going to do some serious great work. This is one of my favorite all-time shows, your Mad Scientist Sports Lab. So that was the first reason I came on. But really quickly, the other you were talking about Greg Hardy. The one thing that people forget about Greg Hardy is he's already been suspended for 16 games because he missed the entire season last year. What they should have done is just fined him 10 game checks for a total. That would have been from last year. So he's now missing 20 games but only 4 game checks. That would be my opinion on Hardy, and that's just from the legal opinion. The moral opinion, you guys are absolutely right. He has no business being in the league. And as far as the collusion goes, I don't know if there's collusion because you have to realize when it's a receiver of the caliber of Demaryius Thomas or Dez Bryant, I believe every team knew if they tried to sign them to a contract, either the Broncos or the Cowboys, depending on who you're talking about, would have matched that amount. And you don't want to tie up your salary cap, and you guys have all said it, in one player such as Dez Bryant or Demaryius Thomas, because as good as they are, a receiver may not necessarily change your team unless he is the one missing piece.
And it's also worth pointing out that depending on what kind of franchise tender we're talking about, the team that were to sign Demaryius Thomas or Dez Bryant, even if they did make an offer the Cowboys chose not to match, would have to give up 2 first-round picks, and that's a lot.
Yeah, 2 first-round picks for a franchise player. I mean, I could understand there's a lot of trepidation and everything like that, but my point was the NFL and the NFLPA, their relationship is basically poisoned right now. It is very, very obvious that DeMaurice Smith and Roger Goodell do not see eye to eye on anything. I can pretty much guarantee you that if they were in the same room, if Roger Goodell were to sneeze and DeMaurice Smith were to if DeMaurice Smith were to sneeze and Goodell said, "God bless you," they would have an argument just about that. I mean, that's how toxic the relationship between the NFL and the NFLPA is.
Actually, if DeMaurice Smith would have sneezed, Roger Goodell would have said, "I bless you."
True. True. That probably would have been exact words coming out of Lord Goodell's mouth and heart and whatever else. So, but Fish, thanks so much for calling in, man. Really do appreciate it. And Thursday night.
I can't wait. Fantasy Jam, me and the Buffalo are back, and like I said, I wouldn't have missed your debut for the show for the world. You guys are doing a fantastic job. I love to listen. Keep it up, Nick. You're a phenomenal person, and as you said, you're one of my peers, one of the people I look up to. So it's great, and keep going, and let's rock this thing out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Fish.
My pleasure.
And we have another caller, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, as you can tell, the phones are blowing up right now at the 951 area code. Ladies and gentlemen, this guy is the head of the Die Hard Sports Radio Network. He happens to be one of the guys that syndicates my show, and I'm absolutely 125% very grateful for everything that he's done for me in doing that, because he's out on the West Coast, gives me a nice little West Coast presence, and I bounce ideas off him, and he's really a great guy, and also he happens to be one of the best homebrewers that I happen to know, so I had to get some pointers from him on that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the head of Die Hard Sports Radio, Steve Itzkowitz. Steve, how you doing?
I'm glad you said little presence on the West Coast, because it's so little sometimes I can't even see it, actually. It's that little. But thanks for having me, Nick. Sounds like a really, really great show.
Thanks a lot. What's your take on the collusion thingy with the NFL and the NFLPA? You think it's worth it, or do you think that this is just the NFLPA blowing smoke?
You know, I think there's something to it, and here's why. There's the reality of the NFL, and there's the perception of the NFL. The perception of the NFL that you hear in all media circles is that it's a quarterback-driven league. One position in the ultimate team sport, a sport that you know as well as I do, Nick, that if one part of your football team is not working, you're not going to win. So let's parlay that to what's going on with these wide receivers. In a quarterback-driven league, the wide receivers and every other position on the field are kind of getting shafted. So it wouldn't surprise me if you have these owners coming together and say, hey, we're going to pull this money into quarterbacks because that's the league we operate in. Thereby, we're going to screw just about everybody else, including the very people that quarterbacks throw to that allow these guys to be as great as they are in a quarterback-driven league. Aaron Rodgers going to Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson is a little bit better than Aaron Rodgers, say, throwing to Ricardo Lockett or Doug Baldwin, for example. So I think these guys should get paid, particularly Demaryius Thomas, particularly Des Bryant, the two best receivers in the league, like you said earlier, Nick. And the owners should not conclude against them while recognizing that ultimately if you're going to be winning in football, all parts of your team have better be clicking, because if not, all you have is a really good quarterback and not much else.
You're absolutely right, Steve, and I want to thank you for actually calling in tonight. Greatly appreciate it. Why don't you just plug Die Hard Sports Radio, and then after that we'll let you go.
Absolutely. Well, Die Hard Sports Radio broadcasts on Tuesday nights from 7 p.m. Pacific till 9 p.m. Pacific, which is 10 to 12. We cover football, basketball, baseball, a little bit of soccer as well, and other sports as well. So we're very, very proud to broadcast the Mad Scientist sports show on Die Hard Sports Radio. We look forward to with over there.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You have a good night, all right?
You too. Bye-bye.
That was Iskowitz from Die Hard Sports Radio joining us as well. Drew, why don't you put a bow on this NFLPA crapola that's been going on lately?
Well, I mean, it's no secret that the Players Association is just dying for an opportunity to stick it to the NFL. And they're using this collusion as an excuse. Because let's be realistic. When was the last time you saw a player that was tagged with the franchise tag and had the 2 first-round pick price? When have you seen him plucked away? I don't recall in my time seeing it when I was actively following sports, and that's been a while. You don't see it because the price tag is so freaking high. So they're just looking for an opportunity to try to stick it to the NFL. I think there's no ground for this because, let's be honest, no offer that's going to come in is going to be a serious offer. It's going to be just something to test the waters. You know, that franchise tag is there for usually 1 year unless they want to really try and pay a lot of money and do it a second year, and they'll be like paying through the nose. But more often than not, it's 1 year and then done, and they get signed somewhere. I think this is an opportunity that the PA is using to try to get other teams to kind of wiggle in. I don't buy this. I don't buy it at all. And as far as, you know, we talk about, you know, the quality of players on the team, this is a problem. This is a society problem. It's not a team problem. This is a society problem. We're seeing this in other sports. It's a growing problem. And as Nick said, we're going to have non-sport shows on there. This is something that could definitely be talked about for hours on end, and we probably still wouldn't have a good resolution to it. So Nick, I got to say, there's still a lot to be said about what these two pieces are going on. But I think there's another piece that you wanted to hit real quick before we switch gears.
Yeah, well,
I like to call it. Nick, before you get into it, I want to say before we get into it that I want a precursor and call it. We're not calling it Independence Day anymore. We're calling it Darwin Award Day.
Show of hands, ladies and gentlemen. How many people like to watch fireworks? I do. I watch fireworks. I don't touch it. I don't even want to bother with it. Why? Because you could probably lose a finger. You could probably lose a hand. Or if you happen to read the news, some idiot put it on their head and had it explode on his head and killed himself. But that's another story for another day. But when you're an athlete that gets paid millions of dollars to perform on the field and you do something as stupid as that, oh boy, what have you done? What have you done? What have you done? And I'm talking about JPP, Jason Pierre-Paul. I just don't get it. Gary, help me out over here. I mean, you're a multi-million-dollar athlete. You need your hands to shed blocks, bat down passes, whatever, and now you lose a finger.
Oh, and not only is Pierre-Paul a millionaire athlete, he's a millionaire athlete in a contract year. When a good season could have meant $15 million a year, easy. Elite defensive ends make a whole bunch of money. It's stupidity on a level. I don't blame the Giants for yanking back that $60 million contract extension that was on the table, because he just showed he can't be trusted. He just cost himself, assuming that he can come back from this injury, he still cost himself tens of millions of dollars with that idiocy.
And Russ, I mean, you know the Giants were willing to pay JPP his money. You know that they franchised him and everything. Now the contract that supposedly was on the table is now off the table. Do you think that JPP has pretty much torpedoed his career with the New York Giants, or do you think the Giants are going to be like, you know what, just take the tender, take your $12.6 million, play the year, let's see how effective you are? Or do you think the Giants may even rescind the franchise offer and say, hey, we don't even want you anymore, go ahead and sign somewhere else, and other teams are going to be very leery in trying to sign him now?
It's going to be interesting to see what happens, because he hasn't signed the franchise tender yet because he's trying to avoid being placed on the non-football injury list, which, similar to the PUP list, would cost him the first 6 games of the 2015 season. And he can't afford to miss 6 games because now he's got, it's put up or shut up time for Jason Pierre-Paul. So, honestly, at this point, I can't tell you what's going to happen. This whole situation is still very much in flux.
Drew, I don't get it. I mean, I don't want to say, well, I'm going to say it. How stupid can someone be knowing that fireworks can be dangerous and can be deadly? And JPP was not the only one to blow his hand off, blow his fingers off. There was that guy in Tampa Bay that plays for Tampa Bay that had it even worse. Lost 2 fingers and half a thumb.
Yeah. Let's first hitting Jason Pierre-Paul. We're not talking about a genius here. He barely graduates high school, was supposed to go to my alma mater, UCF, couldn't get in academically, ends up playing a year at South Florida. We already saw from the get-go, not the sharpest tool in the shed. Then he goes and gets a U-Haul full of fireworks. Once again, not the sharpest tool in the shed. I don't know if you saw the picture, Nick, that's gone around the internet regarding his hand before the surgery. He's lucky to have anything left outside of a thumb. The thumb looked fine, and then the rest was a semi-bit of bone and hamburger meat. It was bad. They spent multiple surgeries rebuilding this kid's hand. The fact that he only lost a finger is amazing. It actually turned out it was at my mother-in-law's hospital where most of this went down in Fort Lauderdale. But in the case of Paul, he's a defensive lineman losing one finger. You can make that work. We've seen, J.J. Watt work with a club hand. But then again, he's not a man. He's a force of nature. However, with C.J. Wilson, his career may be done. You're a corner. You need good hands. And you're a corner, which means you have bad hands to begin with. So the fact that now you have only half a hand and already bad hands to begin with, your career may be done. He was a backup, made $500,000 in his career as opposed to Pierre-Paul, who at least has made a decent more amount of money. I don't know, Nick. As I said, this is the Darwin Award day. You had a guy you mentioned blow up fireworks off his head. There was another one who did it off his chest. Same result, dead as a doornail. You find the dumbest people during Independence Day weekend, and it's almost amazing to watch the things that go horribly wrong.
And it also costs you, as an athlete, possibly your livelihood and possibly millions of dollars of bonuses and salary and whatever. And if you're really that good, money from advertising, money from, sponsorships and stuff like that. And it's beyond me why people would actually do something like that. But then again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not JPP. I don't have that type of mindset. I guess I'm just a responsible human being who just wants to stay far away from fireworks and just watch them on my TV every 4th of July. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, Gary, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Why don't you let the good people know once again where they can find you?
You can find me at BleacherReport.com, where I cover the NFL, FantasySharks.com, where I cover fantasy football, specifically individual defensive players. I'm on Facebook, Gary Davenport, and I'm on Twitter at IDPSharks. Always a pleasure, Nick.
And don't forget, you also happen to have a radio show now on Blog Talk Radio as well.
That's true. Fantasy Football Feeding Frenzy on Wednesday evenings, 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gary. Have a good night.
You too.
And, of course, Russ Goldman, the man, the myth, the legend. Let everybody know where they can find you. And I think you need to plug your appearances on Wii.
Okay, I certainly will do that. But I'll start with you can follow me on Twitter, Russ_Goldman. You can follow my show, Patriots 4th and 2, which is also on Blog Talk Radio. Together, it's Patriots 4 THN 2. The number 2. You can actually follow that on Twitter and listen to it on BlogTalkRadio.com. I also have another show on BlogTalkRadio.com about Fulham Football Club called Cottage Talk, and you can follow that on Twitter. Again, it's all together Cottage Talk, and I'm a co-host for a show called The Soccer Cast, which is on WEI.com. I am a co-host along with the host is Ben Kitchen, who is one of the producers for the Dale and Holly Show, and then another producer, Alex Goldberg. So I get to do that show and talk soccer in Boston, which is fantastic. But I do a little bit of everything, Nick. And listen, I owe you something. I haven't forgotten. When I come to New York, next time I come to New York, I have to take you out to dinner. I still owe you dinner, my friend.
You know, I wasn't going to hold you to it, but now that you mentioned it, dinner's always a good thing. No, I'm joking, Russ.
I owe you dinner, my friend. I lost a bet to you. I owe you dinner next. I want to meet you, and I will take you out to dinner. I just want to mention that.
Nick, what's this bet? What's this bet? I want to know.
Well, 2 years ago. Wow, was it 2 years ago? It was either 2 or 3 years ago. I made a bet with Murph, and I made a bet with Russ. Well, actually, with Russ, it was Wes Welker versus Danny Amendola, who would have more receptions for the year. I went with Welker. He went with Amendola. And, it wasn't even close.
Well, that's silly.
So that wasn't even close. And Murph, if he's listening out there, I do remember the bet we had 3 years ago, but that's another story for another day. Russ, thanks so much for joining us this evening. Have a good night.
Thanks, guys, and best of luck with your show.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
That was Russ Goldman of Patriots 4th and 2 and Cottage Talk, another great gentleman, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be moving on to our next segment, which is going to be Major League Baseball. And joining us tonight is the author of Hardball Retrospective. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to give you Mr. Derek Bain. Derek, how you doing tonight?
Hey, great. How are you?
I'm fine. So tell us about Hardball Retrospective and how did that come about in writing this little tome of yours?
Sure. It started about 5 years ago. Started out writing some articles for Seam Heads, and later on branched off and did some articles for Fangraphs. And I had been actually going back to probably when I was about 10 years old. Been playing a lot of computer baseball simulations. Started out on Commodore 64, and I would play Micro League Baseball. Eventually moved on to Earl Weaver Baseball and Tony La Russa Baseball. And I would always tweak the lineups and the rosters and put together like all-time teams and different lineups and such. So a few years ago, I came up with an idea of what if I put everybody back on their original team and try to determine how the players would have done or how those teams would have done just based on basically revising or retrofitting the standings based on putting the players back on their original teams. So that's how the project came about. and I've been working on the book. It was probably about 5 years now. So I was able to publish it back in January, and happy to see the feedback from some of the folks that have bought it so far, and just looking forward to marketing it and getting it out there to the public.
It's pretty awesome. I back in the day, I used to play Stratomatic, and when I did, yes, Drew, I owned a Commodore 64, and I played Minor League Baseball, Minor League Baseball as well, and all that stuff. But I never thought to ever use that type of information to, all of a sudden put together these types of lineups and stuff like that. And I have to, I have to commend you, Derek, because that it had to take a lot of work to put everything together, to put original teams, and then after that run simulations and stuff like that, and then to put everything together all in one book. That must have, it must have taken a lot of time, and I think in the end, the end product really, turned out to be spot on, man. I really have to give you props for that.
Well, I appreciate it. It did. It was a tremendous effort, and I got my aunt involved. She was involved with proofreading and editing, and a lot of revisions back and forth, and obviously a lot of patience and encouragement from my family. So, but like I said, it was. A lot of hopefully worthwhile, and the idea actually came about from a database that I was using from one of those games. There's a Sean Layman has created a database that goes back. Basically it has every single season in Major League history. So I was able to combine that database with one from the Retro Sheet website, and on the Retro Sheet database they have every transaction that ever occurred in Major League Baseball. So basically combined the two, and I was able to generate all the information I needed for the book.
Wow, that's some heavy research to put together for one book and everything like that. Drew, you have any questions for Derek?
Derek, looking around, regarding the book, I stumbled upon the digital library that's being built based on the book. Can you go a little bit more in detail on how that is being built out?
Right. So for the, I decided to, in order to promote the book, decided to basically replay each of those seasons using one of the latest baseball simulations out there. It's called Digital Diamond, and I actually worked with one of the producers of the game to retrofit my database into their system. So what I do is basically run through it and create starting lineups and the rotations and everything based on the original players on each team. So, for example, Babe Ruth, instead of being on the Yankees in 1927, he's on the Red Sox. Basically any player, whatever team they started with, they're on that team for the duration of their career, as far as my lineups are concerned. So, and then it's just interesting to go back and replay those seasons and see how things might have turned out.
So I guess in my hometown case up in Cleveland, the curse of Rocky Colavito did not happen.
That is correct. Colavito, and actually I was just running through, in order to prepare for the show here, the Indians are actually one of the teams on the list that I came up with. From, this is going back a ways, but from 47 to 59, they basically were above league average in wins above replacement and win shares for that 13-year period. In real life, they only won 2 pennants because of the Yankees pretty much dominated that stretch. But in my retrofitting all the players back on the team that they would have had, which also included Minnie Minoso and I'm trying to think who they had. Larry Doby, Bob Feller, Al Rosen, Bob Lemon, just to name a few. So basically, 13 straight years where they were above league average, and I think they came out, instead of 2 pennants, I think they had 7 or 8.
That's downright depressing.
That was one of the main things that I was trying to hit upon was, hey, if we hadn't traded this player and that player, how would the team have turned out? Another team that was similar is the Giants, and I think that was like a 14-year stretch from like the late 50s to the early 70s, where again I think in real life they only won maybe 1 pennant in that stretch. In the revised standings that I came up with, they won a pennant from 62 to 68, and they traded away a number of outfielders. I know they that actually wound up playing well for other teams, such as George Foster and Gary Matthews and Gary Maddox, and there was just a list of players that they traded. So they were very good at scouting the talent, but then I guess they didn't know what to do with some of the players that they had. I know they had some guys that were outfielders, and they tried to fit them. They tried to play them at third base or first base, and they just they wound up giving up on some of these people a little bit too soon.
So I'm glad I have a beer here with me, because after hearing about my Indian success, I think I need to drink some.
Yeah,
it's
a little depressing when
next year.
It's depressing when you think back and hey, we could have won a World Series or 2, or at least been in contention, and you look back and it's like, oh, why did we we wound up trading this guy, and
look what
he
gave
did. Up on this guy too soon, right? What did we do, right?
I do have another question. It's aimed towards the simulation program you use. Now, when I played computer baseball games, one of my favorite was High Heat Baseball 2000. And I actually didn't do it for the baseball game itself, but I did it for the simulation aspect of it. I actually would create players and see how the teams would act with the players and how they would develop. How does Digital Diamond work? Does it just take players and just, run is it more hands-on? Is it very hands-off? How does it exactly work?
Well, I think you could be a little more hands-on than what I'm doing. The way I'm doing it is I'm letting the computer actually play the games. I'm not managing any of the games, but you can do that. The way I'm doing it is I let it run for about a week's worth of games, and then I go in there and I check if they're using certain players enough or not enough, and then I'll maybe tweak the lineup a little bit, or I'll put someone on the disabled list to give someone else enough playing time. So that's pretty much the extent of how much I'm managing it. So I set the opening day rosters, the lineups and the rotations, and then I just kind of sit back and let it run.
Actually, sounds like fun.
And it's actually very accurate as far as simulating. If you have a player that hit 300 with 30 home runs during the season, he's going to hit something close to that. It's not going to be exact, but it doesn't come off with numbers that are too off the wall.
Now, I'm a Mets fan, and I remember the Mets from the glory years of 1984 to 1989. Before they became the worst team that money can buy. And right. I looking at that team at what might have been. And when you crunched the numbers and you did everything, during that season, do you think that they should have do you think that if you ran those numbers, you know, for that particular, they should have won more than one World Series and such?
So I'm looking at their team right now, and I do have them actually winning in 1986, which is what they did. I have them winning a division title in '87, which they did not, but they were actually pretty close to it anyway. And other than that, they were pretty much above 500 for, I would say, from '84 to '89. And just thinking back to who was on those teams, they had a lot of homegrown talent, which is what basically reflects in my book. Trying to think who they did bring in Keith Hernandez and Gary Carter off the top of my head. But a lot of their players were homegrown, so that's pretty much reflecting in what I have there. So I wouldn't say that they necessarily would have won any more than what they did.
Now, here's the ultimate question, though. I think people would definitely know. When you talk about, like, Major League dynasties and, you know, homegrown talent and trades and everything like that, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this. 1923 to 1964, probably the greatest run any team ever had as a dynasty in any sport. And I'm obviously talking about the New York Yankees.
Right.
Now, we all know that Babe Ruth came over after the 1919 season because of selling of the contract and stuff like that. But what would have happened if Babe Ruth would have stayed with the Red Sox? What would have happened if, Smokey Joe Wood stayed with the Red Sox and other players that were sold to the Yankees, during those periods of time?
Looking at it from the Red Sox perspective?
I'm looking at it from the Red Sox perspective.
Right. So I have when Ruth was on the Red Sox, and he was kind of splitting time between pitching and playing the outfield. So I have them winning a pennant in 1917, and they actually won the pennant in 1918, I believe. So after that, Ruth was traded, and then actually what I have is that they didn't even meet the standards that I had for. Basically, I set a certain bar that a team had to have 4,000 plate appearances, or for the pitching staff that they had to face 4,000 batters to kind of qualify for my standings. So they basically fell off the table after Ruth was traded for the next 7 years. So they don't even, not that they don't exist, but they don't, they just don't qualify for the standings then. And if they had, they were still, other than 1 year, it looks like they would have been below 500 even with Ruth.
Now, when you run these when you run these numbers and when you look at this spreadsheet and everything like that, does the Yankees franchise hold water from 23 to 64? Or after running these numbers, the Yankees franchise, they may have had like a dynasty, but not like that type of dynasty.
Right. So what I have from 27 to 64 is that other than two seasons, which 1944 and 45, which are the war years, basically every other season in that stretch, they were above league average, and they would have won fewer pennants overall, but they were still a dominant team. There are teams, like I mentioned earlier, about the Indians that come into a good run in the 50s there, but the Yankees are still a dominant team. Obviously, they still had a lot of homegrown talent. They had Gehrig, DiMaggio, Yogi Berra, Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, all homegrown. So they definitely still hold water then.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. Being that, my dad, my grandfather, my father, my brothers, they're all Yankee fans. Yes, I know I am the black sheep of the family, being a Met fan and everything like that. It just struck me, with all the work that that you did for this book and everything, and showing people like, if things were like this would have happened. If things were like that, this would have happened. It's an amazing thing what you did, and I give you nothing but 100% props on the work. And I'm serious, people. If you have not picked up this book yet, I would highly recommend it. You will be shocked for the amount of work that was done, how easy of a read it actually is as well. So, Derek, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Why don't you let the people know where they can find you on social media? And again, give a plug to your book one more time.
Sure. The book is Hardball Retrospective. You can find me on Facebook.com/Hardball Retrospective. Also on Twitter, and Twitter handle is Hardball Retro SP.
Thanks so much. Glad to have you on. Wish you nothing but success with the book, and talk to you soon, okay?
Okay, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
No problem.
All righty. Bye-bye.
And that was Derek Bain, ladies and gentlemen. The book, again, is called Hardball Retrospective. I don't think I could sit there and do that much work to put something together, though. That's just amazing.
Oh, that's hardcore amount of work. What he did do, and I thought it was kind of cool, because I used to do this, as I was saying before, with High Heat Baseball 2000, where he would use real teams and just set up and let it go. I would create players down in the rookie leagues and see where their careers went over time. And I thought it was kind of cool that he was doing something similar, but obviously with a more realistic view to it. I wouldn't mind doing that again. I actually enjoyed it. It was a great way to kill time, 15 years ago. But I enjoyed it thoroughly back then.
Well, when I did it back in the day, I got a kick out of it. Stratomatic, like I said, micro baseball on the computer and everything. And, you wanted to be the next, say, Billy Martin or a Weaver, because you were actually, like, simulating a game back then. And, with different types of strategies and everything. And, for this book would probably be the modern day Stratomatic. This book would be like, oh my God, if I did something like that, this team could have done that. This team could have done so much better, or this team could have done so much worse. And who knows? This book may actually be, the cornerstone for anybody that wants to do like one of those retro leagues in which, you pick teams from like 1960 or something like that. Hey, Lenny Melnick, if you're listening, I think this book would definitely be for you. Hardball Retrospective. Trust me, I know you run those type of leagues. Think about that for a second. But anyway,
well, Nick,
joining us.
Nick,
yeah.
I have to say, I'm glad I'm drinking a beer, because I was told that the Indians won like 6 more pennants. This was depressing. This was like the most depressing news I've heard all day. That if we follow the rules of the book, the Indians would have won. This is not cool. This is really not cool.
I know. But I think someone will actually help you drown in your sorrows. Ladies and gentlemen, the other host of Fantasy Jam, bringing it back from the dead, right here on the Inscriber Media Network on Thursday nights, ladies and gentlemen, the Buffalo, Chad Cetera.
Good evening, gentlemen, and Nick. How are you guys doing tonight on this fine, beautiful evening in northern Ohio, where the skies are beautiful? There's only slight clouds, but the stars are aligning for the Indians of the 1960s to win 6 World Series championships and end that draw. Oh, wait, that would still be 50 years ago. So I guess it really doesn't matter, Andrew, if they won it or not 50 years ago, because we'd still be thinking, oh, it's been 50 years since Cleveland has won a championship?
Just once before I die.
Why? Which sport? I'll give you baseball.
Yes.
Well, actually, you'll get basketball next year.
I would have been fine with the Cleveland Gladiators doing it, which they should have, and then they got blasted in the Arena Bowl at home. Please, just give me something to work with.
Yeah, at least in Buffalo we won a major lacrosse championship in Buffalo, so I was happy about that.
Nothing in Buffalo.
Yeah, I mean, you know what's amazing though is that listening to you come on air and once again somehow tweak the little knife in the back a little bit with Drew and not calling me a man, which is typical. But anyway, I'm joking when I say that. But I got to say, I have to finally say this, and it's live on air. Finally, the Buffalo and the Mad Scientist are on the same team when it comes to talent, when it comes to media, when it comes to everything. And putting this together, the Inscriber Media Network, I mean, it actually, I'm going to say it wasn't hard to do because we knew who we wanted to get, we knew who we wanted to bring in, and when you put the Mad Scientist Sports Lab, East Lake Sports, East versus West, Fantasy Sports, the Wednesday show doesn't have a title yet, but that's going to be like the pop culture show, Fantasy Jam, Draft Insiders, all together on one network with the amount of firepower that we have. That's nothing short of, kudos to the people that, are committing to this cause. And I got to tell you, to lead this off tonight, is nothing short of amazing. And I want to say thank you because you were the one that had my ear about it. And to do something like this together was, I just got to, wait. I can actually do this. Hold on.
My hard work this morning worked. Thank you.
Wow.
Andrew, I'll tell you, I spent 35 seconds uploading that onto Blog Talk this morning. It was like the greatest thing I could ever do. And now to know that Nick knows how to use those drops, I'm loving like every second of it.
Well, this is what I have to say about it.
In my eye. And another 35 seconds of my life. I tell you, this is great. This is great stuff. This is what this is all about.
I used to use that one sound bit for an email alert, and now I for text messages. You remember the game Press Your Luck from the 1980s with the whammies?
Oh yeah, they still have that. They have a new modified version of it. It's really great.
Well, the original, yeah, that's my text message sound. I think we need to put that on there for any complete sign of Nick buffoonery. We need to hit that button.
Well, you have access to the studio. You have access to my email. Just send me an MP3. I'll take care of you. I just have to say this because it's necessary, and you talk about me taking knives and turning them a little. FS what? Oh, sorry. I just thought I'd get that out there and just have a little bit of fun. But no, this has been. I think the last time I was on your show, Nick, you mentioned the former host of, the former this, the former that, and to hear the word former from a guy that's about to hit that illustrious age in November, it's like no. I haven't reached that Nick Ficarelli age in life yet.
You're not 70. You're not 70.
No,
come on,
not
guys,
quite.
I just turned 23.
I'll tell you.
Anyway, Chad.
We're losing it.
I did not listen to what my co-host had to say, but I'm sure he was a master of words, and he got to hear himself talk tonight, and usually that makes him all excited. But I will tell you this: There's only one person in this entire industry that can take a guy with the ego the size of the fish, wrap it into one, and compress it into a 90-minute show where he only gets in about 46 minutes of talking of the 90 minutes, and that's Fantasy Jam. Thursday night. We're going at 10 o'clock this Thursday, and then come football season, we're going to lead you right into the Thursday night game, get your fantasy tips, get your trade, get your waiver wires in. We're going to do some other things, too. I don't know if Fish mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about a magazine article that we wrote this past week, something about the women's soccer team and, good for them making the gold, but really does anybody care? We talked about a Confederate flag and flying it, and we even gave our own opinions about should it be wide receiver or running back heavy in fantasy drafts in 2015. So exciting stuff coming up on Fantasy Jam. I'm sure Fish continued to spew. In fact, I bet you if he's listening right now, he's probably talking at the radio going, what the heck is he doing? I can't defend myself. That's because I've got you under control, Fish. You can't say anything
Chad,
when you're not on air. So,
Chad,
yes,
I got a quick question for you. Since we're talking fantasy, Yahoo is coming out with a new daily fantasy program. Good idea or bad idea?
They got to pay for that football game they're doing in London. What did they pay? $1 billion to broadcast? I'd love the Bills, but they paid $1 billion to broadcast the Bills Jaguars in London, the first ever internet-only game. They got to figure out a way to pay for it. So, FanDrafter, I'm not FanDrafter, but what is it? All these daily games that you hear out there that are making boatloads of money. Yes, you get guys that, this guy won $1 million. Well, good, but how much did FanDuel pocket? If somebody won $1 million, it's like Vegas. Vegas pays out 20%. I'm sure FanDuel's paying out 20%. So if one guy makes $1 million, you know that they're making $5. So is Yahoo the smart move? I love it.
And here's another thing to think about real quick before we jump to the next thing. Online poker for money is still not legal. So how long till fantasy sports falls the same way as online poker?
It's food for thought. It is food for thought, and you've got to think that the federal government, who gets their hands in on everything, is going to figure out a way to get their hands in on this. But until they do, the multi-billion-dollar industry known as the NFL is going to continue to monopolize on us, the fan. They're going to continue. What was the first sport to have a all network just devoted to their sport? That was the NFL. What sport has the highest ratings every year in February? Oh wait, that's the NFL. I mean, their regular season games have a higher rating, and then Andrew, you're a Cleveland guy. The NFL regular season games, the Browns against the Steelers, had a higher rating than the Cavs versus the Warriors NBA Finals. So what's that tell you? It tells you the NFL is king.
Told you the Cavs still lost.
All right, Chad, thanks so much for joining us tonight, man. Thanks for calling in. Thank you for the not-so-kind words, but I'm sort of used to
Nick,
it right now.
You know I love you, Nick.
I know. Have a good night, all right?
See you later, guys.
See ya.
Chad Cetera, the Buffalo, host of Fantasy Jam Thursday nights right here on the Inscriber Media Network. And now joining us, talking some NBA, ladies and gentlemen, and boy, did we have a week on that. There's nothing I can really say about this guy that I haven't said already. And he writes for NGSC Sports. He writes for Pro Players Insider. He writes for Sports Talk Florida. He writes for his own blog, Black Red Sox Fan. He writes and he writes and he writes, and he's damn popular doing it. And he's a Renaissance man. He doesn't just talk football. He doesn't talk baseball. He doesn't talk hockey. He talks basketball. And there's not one bad article, not one. And it's a pleasure to always have him on air. And why not have him for the first show on the Inscriber Media Network? It's Mad Scientist Sports Lab show. Ladies and gentlemen, Antoine Staley. Antoine, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well. So NBA free agency pretty much in full blast, and well, we had our first drama of the off season with DeAndre Jordan. For all those that have been living under a rock, Jordan decided to give a verbal agreement to the Dallas Mavericks, and it was going to be a max contract. Talked into it by one of his best friends, Chandler Parsons, and Mark Cuban was ready to do everything. It was like a domino effect though, because they put all their eggs in this one basket.
Yeah.
They created a couple of cogs. They brought in Wesley Matthews. Everything seemed to be going their way, and all of a sudden, DeAndre starts getting a little bit of cold feet. Doc Rivers starts calling. Blake Griffin starts calling. Chris Paul starts calling. Then we see the great emoji effect of Twitter and Instagram for literally 12 hours. And next thing you know, the Clippers lock themselves in DeAndre Jordan's house in Texas. He doesn't answer Mark Cuban's calls or texts. He doesn't answer Chandler Parsons. He doesn't answer to anything. And the next thing you know, swerve, he re-signs with the Clippers. He comes out and apologizes, but I have to tell you,
I guess you could call that an apology.
I have to tell you, Twan, this was one extremely weird, funny, yet sad, piece of drama that took place in NBA free agency. I can honestly say I haven't seen anything like this in quite some time.
Yeah, it was definitely odd. I thought he was definitely going to Dallas, and what Mark Cuban and the whole Dallas Mavericks franchise has sold to DeAndre Jordan is that he was going to be the go-to guy to franchise. Like even Mark Cuban went on to compare him to Shaquille O'Neal, which of course that's far-fetched, but that's how much they really like DeAndre Jordan. He felt like he was going to be their franchise and face of the future, especially with Dirk Nowitzki being getting up there in age and gonna phase out at some point. So. But yeah, I like I say, the whole thing was just weird to me, that particular Wednesday. And to be honest with you, like from, reports saying that, the Clippers were going to make some moves and then them going to Houston to talk to them and them locking themselves, locking DeAndre Jordan, pretty much, keeping him for ransom like it was a Panic Room movie or whatever. And then Mark Cuban flying to Houston trying to meet with DeAndre Jordan. It was just, the whole thing would just sound like a soap opera. It's like a men's NBA soap opera pretty much. But yeah, I hadn't seen anything like it, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, it was, what do you call it? Like as DeAndre turns, twists, and swerves. That would have been great. That would have been a great title. But if you look at it in the overall aspect, this was a major setback, blow, whatever it may be, to the franchise because, as I stated earlier, they put all their eggs in this one basket, and this could set off a domino effect because they let Tyson Chandler go to Phoenix.
Yep.
They put in Wesley Matthews, who still is going to be, who knows if he's going to even be playing this year because of the injury that happened last year. They pretty much did not give a care in the world about the draft because, let's be honest, the last 10 years, who have they really drafted that's pretty much stuck around in Dallas? And Nowitzki is not getting any younger, and sacrificed so much so they can build a winner. And for this to happen is like the ultimate slap in the face to the Dallas Mavericks franchise, and Cuban may actually have to say, it may be time for me to blow it up. It's not going to happen. He'll try to work around it, but this was bad for Dallas.
Yeah, I think, because they were sitting there and they were still trying to win and not do a total rebuild, which is now it's kind of you have to question like what are their they're at the crossroads essentially now. Do you do a total rebuild or do you continue to try to win? With the roster that you have, they got Darren Williams. He got bought out by the Nets yesterday, and he's gonna eventually sign with Dallas. So all reports are saying, but in the Western Conference, my thinking about making the playoffs is it's good for fans for the team to make the playoffs when you're a 7th to 8th seed, but really, what's the end all game? Unless you're getting, you're improving to getting to the 1 or 2 spot. Then, you're kind of in purgatory. So, I would rather, you kind of rather be bad and then get those draft picks and, stock up and, get, salary cap relief and everything like that as opposed to being a 7 seed or 8 seed and just constantly being there and just, essentially knocking your head against the wall every year. So they have a decision to make and, they really, they're kind of paying for, the 2011 championship really. To be honest with you, kind of like what the Phillies and baseball are doing, paying for 2008, and they're really going to have to figure out what, their next, end all is there in Dallas.
Yeah, and Drew, I don't know. I really don't know what else to say about this.
Well, I think we're missing a couple bits here. We first talk about the emoji war. And we found out there are 2 guys in particular who don't know what they're doing. One is Paul Pierce, who failed miserably at the emoji. He did a picture of emoji, not an emoji actual. Second is Scottie Pippen, who didn't do one at all. Just riding MJ's coattails once again. Hey, Scottie Pippen.
They're older guys though. I don't even I'm 32. I don't even know about emojis.
Paul Pierce is not old.
He's old in NBA years. He's a little bit older than me. He's a little bit older than me. I'm not always on the technology either, like the emojis. I'm still figuring all that out. I feel like that's a young kid's game and all that, but I don't know.
I'm 32, and Nick.
Yeah, you're the same age as me.
And Nick still uses rotary phones, so take it for what it is. But I do want to hit one thing real quick regarding this whole fiasco with DeAndre Jordan. Can we finally get rid of Chris Broussard? This guy made such a mess dealing with Mark Cuban, and all he did was go and issue an apology afterwards. My sources say that Cuban is frantically driving around looking for DeAndre. No, it's not what happened. The guy is a liar. We've seen him multiple times. Does anyone, do either of you guys hate Chris Broussard services at all? It makes me not want to watch ESPN. I put him with Skip Bayless and Stephen A. Smith for all-time tool bags of sports personalities. What do you think?
Well,
I was just going to say, the whole thing just sounds ridiculous, to be honest with you, to begin with anyway. Just, Mark Cuban, the man, he were in the Yahoo website. He can find anybody's address, especially in this day and age. He would know what the address is. If I could find DeAndre Jordan's address, to be honest with you, if I really wanted to. That's how advanced technology is in this day and age. So I know Mark Cuban, with all the access, all the things he has access to, could have found it. So I thought the whole thing, to begin with, was ridiculous anyway. But yeah, Chris Broussard, he has a lot of questionable things, and a lot of people don't really take him seriously, and this is kind of just one of those instances.
And since we're talking about blowhard ESPN personalities, there is one great term. It's an amalgamation of 3 words. That we have Nick and I have taken it to heart to symbolize certain things that go on in the realm of sports. So, Nick, what's going on? What's with these 3 words being brought together to form the ultimate? I'm missing it here. Help me out here. Come on. What is it again?
This whole thing. Look. This whole thing. This whole saga. This whole drama. This whole soap opera is one thing. It's a travesty. No. not travesty. It's a sham. I don't think it's a sham. It's a mockery. It's a Travis Sham mockery, I tell you. It's a Travis Sham mockery.
What happened?
But in all seriousness, Jordan got paid. DeAndre Jordan got paid. I say Jordan, everybody thinks of Michael. DeAndre Jordan got paid. He got paid his money. Let's see how it turns out with, because we all the other big thing with that whole DeAndre Jordan leaving was like he was getting tired of being dissed by Chris Paul, and yet Chris Paul pretty much practically was on his hands and knees wanting DeAndre to come back home. So who knows what really happened behind closed doors? To be honest with you, who cares? He got paid. He's going to be back in L.A. They're going to be a 50-win team. They're going to be a 5 seed, and they're going to blow a 3-1 series anyway because they don't know how to close out a game. It's just in their DNA. Moving on, if there's a team that has a DNA of knows what to do and knows how to win and knows how to do it right, it's the San Antonio Spurs. Why, you may ask? When someone asks Greg Popovich, what are you doing at 12:01 a.m. when free agency begins, Popovich in perfect pop talk goes, I'm going to be sleeping. I am not making phone calls. If they don't want to play here, we don't want them. In which I was like, that's Pop, which means there's something going on in San Antonio. Right off the bat, boom, re-signed Kawhi Leonard to 5 years, $80 million. Congratulations. Sign Tim Duncan for another 2 years at below market value. And I'm sitting there like, okay, Duncan's coming back. Something big is going to happen. We just don't know yet. Sure enough, LaMarcus Aldridge. Out of all the teams that Aldridge was going to, I would have never, ever, ever thought the Spurs. Somehow they did it. And then we sit back and we find out that David West turns down $12 million of a player option from the Indiana Pacers to sign for the league minimum to go play in San Antonio. I sat there stunned. I was like, he just gave up $12 million. But do you know why he wanted to win his title? He's willing to forego his money to go play for the model franchise of the NBA. And they're not done. We know that. They need a bench. They're 7-8 strong right now, but you need the other 3 guys to fill out the bench. And who knows what other veteran is going to go sign for the league minimum knowing that they need to win a championship. I just sit there and I'm like, this is how a franchise gets run. When you have R.C. Buford, when you have Greg Popovich working together, it's not like George Karl and Vlade Divac and Vande Rindive or whatever the frick that guy's name is over there in Sacramento. By the way, DeMarcus Cousins is just a head case, but that's another story for another day. You sit there and you just shake your head like, how? How do they do it? Twan, I got to ask you, what is it about the San Antonio Spurs that, makes them such a cohesive unit that everybody is still trying to play catch-up with them? Even if they don't win the championship, it seems like they always are a step ahead of everybody else.
They're like the St. Louis Cardinals of baseball. Like they have one of the best organizations in all the sports actually, and that's where it really starts. Just from the top down, and they have a plan and they implement that plan, and everybody else just kind of has to follow suit. And as far as like Aldridge, I wasn't surprised at all. I figured everybody was talking about the Lakers, and I never thought he was going to go to the Lakers. I thought he was going to go back home. He's from Texas. He went to the University of Texas, so I figured it'd be one of the Texas teams that he would go to, and I figured it'd be the Spurs. Like, anytime the Spurs are, in the midst for somebody, especially, LaMarcus Aldridge, him geared to turn 30 years old, and he's seeing the end of the line, and of course he wants to go out there, go and win a championship and have the best chance to do that. And the Lakers couldn't do that. The Knicks obviously couldn't do that. Dallas, even if they would have signed him, I don't think they would have been able to do that. So the Spurs gave him the best chance to win, and him just kind of being the heir apparent to Tim Duncan. I thought it was just like a perfect fit. But to answer your question, it's just they're just cohesive unit, and everybody wants to go play there, and they're willing to take less just to do that.
Drew, put a bow on this one because, you just have to sit there and you just marvel at the excellence of the Spurs. Now, before I even say that, people seem to forget that it was about 15, 20 years ago where this team was part of the dregs of the NBA. I mean, really, after George Gervin and Artis Gilmore left, this team had, no business whatsoever, being in the NBA. They were like a 20-win season. Who knew, who knew that once they drafted David Robinson, that this dynasty would continue to, flourish, especially with the NBA now when you have these hard caps and everything.
Well, before we get into the nitty gritty, you got to look at. We talk about David West leaving, $11+ million on the table to go sign with San Antonio. Look at why he left Indiana. He had some very scathing words for the Pacers before he left. I mean, he has a lot of venom towards the Indiana Pacers, and that's why he was willing to leave so much money on the table. He just had to get away. I think that's bigger than him taking the league minimum. I found it interesting. He spurned the Cleveland Cavaliers to sign with the San Antonio Spurs. I think it's a perfect mix for him. LaMarcus Aldridge going to San Antonio. Reason number one of why San Antonio was even considered, he didn't want to start at center. He doesn't have to start at center. They can put Duncan at center and have him at the number 4 spot, and he'll be happy. Even if they end up swapping back and forth, they're pretty much interchangeable. But it's amazing in today's age to find dynasty franchises. You've seen it in New England with the Patriots in a league that prides itself on parity. In the NBA, they try to do the same thing where you see only very few franchises winning titles. It's why the Golden State Cleveland final was so refreshing, because someone new was finally going to win one that hasn't won in God knows how long. But San Antonio is one of the most consistent franchises over the last almost 20 years. It's just unbelievable to see how Greg Popovich, even into his olden days, is still able to put winning team after winning team together of guys with low egos, or at least are willing to stow their egos to make magic happen. It's very hard to find that kind of team-first mentality in any professional sport that is on the mainstream. Even hockey, you don't see that. You see it more in MLS just because of the nature of the beast, but you don't see it as much in baseball. You definitely don't see it as much in football. And the other NBA teams, it's a me star league. To find a team of a bunch of blue collar guys, hard to find. And it's, even though I was kind of like, well, I'd love to see them finally lose, I really don't. I love seeing a team that's so unegotistical keep winning.
Now, then you look at the opposite end of the spectrum, and you look at the Philadelphia 76ers, and this team has gone into complete tank mode. Sam Hinkle wants to build, and last year they took from Kansas, Joel Embiid, and he had the foot injury. He was out for the year, pretty devastating injury. But, towards the end of the year, they showed him practicing, dunking, looked like everything was going to happen. And then we find out today that he's going to have another surgery, and he's going to be out another year. I mean, I feel bad for the kid, but this is, we've seen it with Sam Bowie, we've seen it with Greg Oden, we've seen it with other big men. Once they get some sort of really serious injury, it's going to their careers are pretty much ruined. So why don't you tell me what your feelings on it?
This goes one of two ways. Because this bone, and let me try to butcher the pronunciation, the navicular bone in his right foot. This is the same boat that Yao Ming broke that ended up costing him his retirement. So it's also the same bone that Zydrunas Ilgauskas from the Cavaliers broke in the beginning of his career. It caused him to miss most of his first 3 seasons, but then he played pretty much injury-free for over a decade after that. It can go either way. He's very young. I think there's a good chance he can go the Ilgauskas way and still have a very productive career. I suppose when Yao Ming had his injury, he was already, a little long in the tooth, and it caused him to lose a couple steps. The thing with this is, considering how Philadelphia has drafted big men each of the last 3 drafts, if Embiid's injury is going to change how they handle their personnel, because I don't know about both of you, but I'm still scratching my head why they keep going after center.
To go center, that's got to be telling me that they really, honestly, truthfully have no idea, what they're doing. I mean, why would you go 3 centers in a row? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, you have a team to build. And yes, I understand you had like 75 draft picks in the last 3 years, and you're trying to build through a draft and everything. But all it takes is one bad injury, and it sets your franchise back. It doesn't help you. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know, Antoine Staley has, dropped. Trying to get him back on, but for some reason the phone keeps dropping. Hopefully he'll be back on very, very shortly. We'll see what happens with that. But back to this. To me, it's almost as if Hinkle doesn't know what he's doing. He's doing his best to build, but 3 centers in a row tells me that. I don't know, Drew. I just don't get it. And
go ahead.
It's just you look at some of the franchises, the Sixers, the Knicks, the Lakers. Teams that used to be, in the upper echelon of the NBA, and now in the last few years. Take away a couple seasons here and there. I mean, I can't say that about the Lakers because they were in the playoffs just a couple of years ago, but the signs were there. The Knicks, they're just run like crap, and the Sixers, they blew everything up to rebuild, but they haven't done it the right way. I don't know. I mean, I really just don't know. What's the proper way of doing things?
Well, it's part of the course, I guess, in Philadelphia to not be able to build your team. I mean, look at the baseball is struggling. Football, I'm not sure what they're doing. Basketball is a train wreck. It seems to be. It must be something in the water, and that's too bad because I love the bread they use for Philly sandwiches, and maybe it's something there. Someone polluted the water, maybe gave them the stupid gene or something that has prevented them from making sound personnel decisions. When we came into this draft, everyone's like, they can't be drafting another center. They just can't do it. And lo and behold, they draft another center. At least with Noel, they got an injured guy that they got a little bit cheaper. They're viewing him as, well, he was quality-wise the number 1 prospect. We got him a couple picks lower. We worked our way up to get him. Embiid was not expected to miss as much time as he did, and now even to miss a whole another year. I hope that his body adjusts. We are not meant to be this big, 7 feet big guys. Our bodies aren't built for this, and that's why these small but crucial bones, in particular the lower body, become fragile and break because we're not built to be so big, and it causes problems. Look at Ming, look at Ilgauskas, look at Embiid. They're all 7-foot-plus guys who have had problems because of their size. Now the question is, how is his recovery going to be, and whether he has the Ming ending of retirement or the Ilgauskas ending of a very fruitful career.
You know, I really do feel that Embiid will adjust. I mean, he will work his way back. And I think he will have a decent career. It's not going to be a rock star career, not whatsoever. And he will be like Big Z, because Big Z, you know, he lost a couple of years due to injury, but, you know, he was still effective when he came back. So we shall see, you know, what happens with Joel Embiid. We'll see what happens with the Philadelphia 76ers, you know, and we'll just move on from there. Joining us now, ladies and gentlemen, we have our friends from the student section back in the lab. And it's been a while since they've been here, pretty much since college basketball season came to an end. As everybody remembers, back in the day, we did the 64-team breakdown in what was one of the most fun episodes that I ever had, right here on the Mad Scientist Sports Lab. And joining us is one of the cogs of putting together that list, and he's here to talk some NCAA football this time because, you know, it's only a matter of time before, you know, they lace him up and get him out on the field. So, ladies and gentlemen, from the student section, let me give you Terry P. Johnson. Terry, how you doing?
Doing well, my friend. How about yourself?
Doing well. So, you guys at the student section right now are putting together your top 50 teams in college football. Been doing a great job with that. Tell us how it's been going so far.
It's been going pretty well. I was going to say with it, what we did to get the top 50 teams was we took all the editors, and then we have one contributor, Kevin Causey, who's always writing and always has some great takes. So the four of us voted. We each put our top 50 teams in. We tallied them up, and that's how we arrived at where we are. One thing that I wanted to point out was that while we have the top 50, the authors of the preview speak for themselves, and that has caused a little bit of an issue because somebody said, hey, Terry, I saw you said Virginia Tech was going to win 10 games, but why do you have them at number 37? So wanted to clear that up. While the staff has Virginia Tech as 37, I have them much higher.
Well, yeah, I would figure that much. I mean, everybody's going to have their own opinions when they talk about college football and everything like that. But obviously, I want to talk about with you right now what happened in the news this week. And Florida State University, once again, rearing its ugly, and I mean ugly head. We saw what happened with the quarterback Johnson, you know, getting kicked off the team because he punched a woman in the face, and now their top running back coming back this year, Cook, you know, gets arrested. I gotta say, Jimbo Fisher, God bless him as a coach, but my God, it's almost like he's running an inmate asylum there. What do you call it? You got anything on this? Terry, you there?
Well, yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I was trying to think of it. The only thing that stood out to me was I thought I read earlier today that he's basically banning players from going to bars, which I think is the wise thing to do. I mean, that would be the thing that I would do anyways. I mean, one thing that like I say, I'm an old man now, but one thing I remember from my college days is that college kids are going to make mistakes, and you know, so the smartest thing you could do as a head coach is, you know, take away opportunities where somebody might make a mistake. Again, in this case, it was a big mistake. I mean, violence against women is a huge problem in society today, and you know, it's just not something. You know, sadly, we're just seeing too much of it. So, I mean, I feel bad for all the victims in this case that this is going on. I mean, again, there's two sides to every story, and I don't want to appear like I'm taking sides until all the facts come out. But you mentioned the one with the quarterback. I mean, I saw the video, and I was like, well, okay, you know, that looks like it's going to end terribly, and you know, I hate to see that happen. But the good that comes out of this, I guess, is that again, the Florida State players won't be in the bar. They won't be in that situation. And, if you're not in a situation, nothing bad will happen.
Well, so, Terry, the next question is this even enforceable? I mean, can Florida State babysit their players on a 24-hour basis? And these are kids. They're going to go out. They're going to supposedly have a good time. And some of them get a little carried away. But I don't know if this is really enforceable. I do have a little concern that this could be opening Pandora's box as far as the control that schools exude over players. What do you think?
Well, I mean, you raise a very valid point. You cannot monitor anybody all the time. If you could, coaches would already be doing it. There's going to be things that you don't, that you just, you can't watch them 20. I mean, short of putting a microchip and a GPS on them, you can't monitor everybody 24 hours a day. So from an enforceability standpoint, I could see that being a problem. I kind of have mixed feelings on this issue, and that is, I want everybody to be able to keep it straight and narrow, but by the same token, the point of going to college is to learn what it's like in the real world. And sometimes, the biggest lesson that I learned in college was that actions have consequences. If I stay out till 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to perform horribly on that test. So, I want to see people walk a straight path, but at the same time, I don't want to take away their ability to learn life lessons. So it's kind of a delicate balance, but as you said, it's really not enforceable. You can make all the rules you want. If you don't have people to actively monitor it, maybe that's not going to be as effective.
Yeah, because, I look at the two cases, DeAndre Jordan and Dalvin Cook. In the case of Cook, the current investigation is saying that he repeatedly punched some lady in the face multiple times, and the lawyer's coming out for Johnson saying that this woman was hurling racial slurs towards Johnson before the altercation really went out of control. Don't get me wrong. Men should not hit women. There is a massive strength difference and a lot of these people are not equipped to defend themselves against the strength of a pro athlete, in this case a college athlete, from cold cocking them. However, this needs to be taken into consideration too. You're dealing with a volatile athlete who's trained to run around and be very physical. Throwing racial slurs to basically instigate a specific move, that makes it really cloudy, especially in what's going on in our current world here with all the political stuff going on. Racial stuff is a big deal now. So the fact that they were talking about racial slurs being thrown out before the punch, do you think this could help the quarterback's case maybe work his way back into school?
Well, that to me is a slippery slope, because it's like, okay, you're dealing with two things that are inherently evil. Racism is inherently evil. Striking a woman is inherently evil. Where do you draw the line? I mean, I think the best thing, again, as I'd mentioned earlier, the best thing you can learn in college is that actions have consequences. If that lady did in fact hurl a racial slur at him, I hope that she is punished for that, because that has absolutely no place in our society. But by the same token, regardless of what she said, he had an obligation to do the right thing. He did not do the right thing. So even if she did hurl that slur at him, I feel like he should probably be kicked out of school, maybe go to play at the FCS level, go on, get his degree, learn all that. So it's one of those that, there's still some punishment for his actions, but it doesn't prevent him from playing college football and from learning his lesson. And, perhaps, he'll serve some community service, for battered women and to teach other young kids, hey, you don't do this. And if you do this, here's what the consequences are. So, I mean, I think it would help his case, but I still feel like the actions have to have a consequence.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. Going down to FCS or even Division II, as a result. Still play. Plenty of players go from that level to the pros if you're good enough. You make a very valid point. I want to change gears a little bit, and part of this is a little bit of blatant homerism on my part. I went to UCF. That's my alma mater. Talking about Big 12. And I don't want to spread innuendo or anything, but there seems to be a lot more noise coming out, a lot of smoke, because of a variety of different college presidents, and particularly David Boren from Oklahoma, talking about the stability of keeping 10 teams in the Big 12. And then some more news starts coming out of we're going to narrow it down to 3 teams, and here's some other stuff, and we got these 3 scenarios. Do you believe there's honest smoke to this? Do you think that the Big 12 is going to honestly make a move within the next year to year and a half in growing from 10 to 12 teams?
I'll remain. I mean, I think there's honestly something to it. But by the same token, I think the Big 12 would be wise to wait a few years and see what happens. And I say that because there's a lot of overreaction. The Big 12 did not miss the national championship game last year because it didn't play a championship game. It missed out on the college football playoff because Baylor didn't play anybody. They played an absolutely joke of a schedule, and that's why they didn't get in. Whereas TCU played an okay non-conference schedule, but they didn't beat Baylor. And while the selection committee can say, well, we rated them as co-champions, make no mistake about it. Those guys thought that Baylor was a conference champ because they won the head-to-head meeting. So Baylor did not get in because of a lack of a championship game. They didn't get in because of a weak schedule. Now, should they expand to 12 teams? Well, I mean, that all depends. Everything I've heard says, hey, the conference is doing great with 10 teams as it is, and the reason that they don't want to bring in 2 more teams is they don't want people cutting into that. And another thing that that I feel like gets overlooked is, a conference championship game only helps you if your conference champion wins. The example that comes to mind was 1998, where we had the BCS system. All Kansas State had to do was beat Texas A&M. Well, Texas A&M pulled the upset, and would they convert a 3rd and 17 to go ahead and win the game? And all of a sudden, Kansas State goes from, hey, we're going to BCS championship game, to, out of a BCS bowl completely. So it's a dual-edged sword. I happen to like the round robin schedule. I like the 10-team format a lot better because there's no missing everybody. Everybody plays everybody. At the end of the year, you know who the champion is because there was a head-to-head matchup. Whereas in the SEC, I can't remember the last time I saw Alabama and Georgia, the 2 top teams in the conference. I can't remember the last time I saw them play in the regular season. I want to say it was like 2005 or 2007. I mean, it's been a long time. They should be playing every year. In the Big 12, the best 2 teams play every year.
So with that in mind, do you think that Oklahoma, David Boren, he's a power broker. He's second in line as far as political weight there, behind Texas, of course. Do you think he's got some sort of ulterior motive in mind? Because he said some pretty rough words as far as the condition of the conference. He basically said we're at a competitive disadvantage because we're not at 12. On the surface, I agree with you. I think things are okay and it's overreacting. The homer in me says, please do something. Go into Florida. We'd love to have you. But the realist in me is kind of taking a more cautious approach. But do you think there's an ulterior motive with what Oklahoma's doing?
Well, again, I would expect a university president to always act in the best interest of his university as opposed to the best interest of the conference. So there's, if I had to guess, and I don't have any real insight into it other than just, things I read, if I had to guess, there's something that Oklahoma wants. And what he's doing by making that statement is creating doubt and creating fear. And, at some point, the Big 12 commissioner has got to jump in and say, wow, they really might go to the SEC if we don't give them what they want. So, again, I don't think they're at a competitive disadvantage at all. I think that's an overreaction. And, again, it goes back to it's an overreaction. We have to wait and see how this whole thing play out. If there had been an upset in the SEC championship game last year, Baylor and TCU might have gotten in. I mean, it's just a thing. It seems to me like it's an overreaction to say we're a competitive disadvantage based on the results of one season.
I got one more question for you, and then I'll pass you back to Nick. Ohio State, obviously very, very likely going to be a consensus number one coming into the season when the last set of preseason polls come out. Who starts at quarterback? They're all staying for the party. Who's going to be the guy to lead the charge? Braxton Miller staying, but I don't know if he's the best man for the job.
Well, I was going to say I have to think all the way back to when my wife was a senior at Utah and Urban Meyer was head coach out there, and I know that coaches always say, the starter doesn't lose his position because he's injured. Well, I saw it happen. But back then, there was a guy named Brett Elliott. He quarterbacked the team for 2 games. He broke his wrist against Texas A&M. Alex Smith, who would end up being the number 1 pick in the draft a few years later, took over as the starter. And Elliott never got back on the field, and he ended up transferring to Linfield College in Oregon, Division III, and led them, I think, to the title game. But, I mean, to answer your question, you can't really go wrong. I'm pretty sure it's not going to be Barrett. So your choices are going to be Braxton Miller or Cardale Jones. I want to wait and see how healthy Braxton Miller is. I know he made some proclamation today saying, I think I'm the best athlete in college football. I'm healthy. I'm still not convinced that injury kept him out the whole year. It's been almost 18 months since he's thrown a football. So, or he's throwing a football the way he's accustomed to throwing it, like you would expect a quarterback to. I'd have to think Jones at this point, just because, he took him. He played 3 top 10 opponents and led the team to victory. He's done nothing to hurt his cause. Unless Miller just is flat out better than him in fall camp, I think Jones has to be the guy.
Now, Terry, with me coming back in right now, I think one of the other big things that happened during this off season is the 3-headed monster that we have right now that's taking place in Ohio State. Now, as everybody knows, last year Ohio State ran roughshod in the BCS playoffs, won the national championship, and did it with, at the time, was their 3rd-string quarterback in Cardale Jones. Now, everybody thought that Braxton Miller was going to transfer. He said, no, I'm the best player on this team. I am going to be the starting quarterback and, take my rightful position back. Then, of course, you have J.T. Barrett, who stepped in for Braxton Miller when he got hurt and did a great job himself. And then you had Cardale Jones, who stepped in when Barrett got hurt and played for the most amazing games that one can play, especially for a freshman. Now, I got to ask you, with this embarrassment of riches that he has right now, how does Urban Meyer toe the line with these 3 quarterbacks? Because it's going to be pretty obvious. Someone is not going to be happy in the end. What do you think that he's going to do to try to let everybody, try to placate everybody without blowing anything up?
Well, I think the thing that stands out to me is that Barrett is the youngest of the 3. He has more time. It would not be unprecedented to have somebody sit out. Chad Pennington, who went on to play the NFL, that actually happened to him when he was at Marshall. He guided the team in the national championship. Well, Eric Kresser transferred from Florida Gators on there, and Pennington redshirted, and Kresser came in and led the team to the national championship. Penning came back and, led them to Division I, where, I think they won a couple of MAC titles after that. So I would have to think something like that would be the case. As far as Barrett goes, it would be like, okay, we may have to redshirt you, or we may have to, he'll be the 3rd guy out. As far as Jones and Miller, the thing that stands out is unless Miller is 100% back to the way he used to be, and by that I mean, the guy that threw the ball 40 yards across his body for the game-winning touchdown against Wisconsin in 2011. If that guy is back and is healthy, that needs to be the starting quarterback. Jones needs to be the backup. But with such a long layoff, it's going to be at least mid-season, I would think, until Miller's back at that form. The case, what I would do is I would start Jones and work some packages in for Miller, get his feet wet, kind of like what Urban Meyer did at Florida when he had Chris Leak was, the starting quarterback, but when he needed the quarterback runs and he needed different things, he'd switched it to Tim Tebow. So that's what I think we'll see more of. But again, Urban Meyer is, I would say, the best coach in college football today. I can promise you he's got some other scenario that none of us have thought about that's going to put Ohio State in a position to be successful.
And you'll probably be getting some hate mail from down south in Alabama, where Nick Saban is the God reincarnate down there. So so be prepared for that. Last question for me tonight. Notre Dame. We all know what happened with Everett Golston. He ended up transferring. They had a pretty blemished off season. I think they dismissed a couple of players. Brian Kelly still getting a lot of guff from the esteemed alumni of the Fighting Irish and everything like that. A lot of people said that this was going to be the year that Brian Kelly had to take them back into the BCS playoff. I don't see it happening. I see them getting into a BCS bowl game, but where do you personally have Notre Dame ranked, and do you think they have an outside chance of getting into the playoffs?
Let me pull up my poll here. I have Notre Dame at number 19. I think they have a good team. They certainly have a lot of experience, and I feel like those players are going to get better. Again, USC and Stanford are very good team, and again, I think Zaire's a good player. I think the offense will be able to move, but my biggest concerns would be, the Notre Dame defense. I mean, we talked about all of Golson's problems on the football, but it doesn't matter if your defense stands resolved or stands tall and keeps them out of the end zone. I have them 19th. I have them losing. I've got them here as 10-2. I can't read my handwriting as to which two games I have them losing, but I have them going 10-2 and finishing 19th.
Drew, you have one final question for him?
Yeah, and once again, going back to blatant homerism, who wins the first championship game in the American Athletic Conference this year?
I'm afraid to answer because I might not be invited back.
You're allowed to say Cincinnati.
Actually, I was gonna go a little bit different. I was gonna say the Houston Cougars. I feel like Tom Herman's got a great team there. He's got a great crew to work with. Their defense was, a lot of people forget Houston had a great defense last year, but it got overlooked because of how flashy the offense was. But, now that they're bringing the defensive coordinator from Utah State, I think they're going to go from a good defense to a great defense. And since defense wins championships, I think their defense is just a little bit better than UCF.
Oh, well, I can't argue that. I mean, UCF's defensive secondary just got absolutely decimated. There's a lot of inexperience. I'd probably have them at eight wins. I can live with that. Go back.
Well,
to
I was gonna say,
crappy bowl again.
Part of this goes from growing up in Atlanta. I saw George O'Leary every time they'd be like, "Oh, Georgia Tech's defense is terrible." He'd come up with another top 20 unit. So I never worry about defense on a George O'Leary coach team.
And yeah, that's pretty much how the program's been for the last almost 15 years that he's been there. Or 10 years, sorry. I can't even count. But it's late in the day when you can't even count right. But I'm very excited to see the Naval Academy in a conference. I'm very interested to see how this works out. Army did it back in Conference USA up to 2005. It did not work out well for them, but I think Navy's a different breed. I think they're going to actually be pretty competitive in the American. I think it's a good fit.
Oh, it's a great fit. I was going to say I live a couple miles from a naval base here in St. Mary's, and a lot of Navy fans are sitting going, yeah, man, we're real excited about this. So I like you said, I think it'll be a great fit, and I don't think it'll be like Army where it's 3 years and out. I think this is a partnership that'll last a long time.
Yeah, unfortunately, they don't come down to Orlando until the last year of the rotation. I think in like 2018 or 2017, some way far back. But you know what? That's okay. I will still enjoy the game. Nick, why don't you start wrapping things up for us? Because I know you love doing it all so much.
Absolutely. Terry, thank you so much for joining us tonight. As always, why don't you plug the student section on the Blogwin Network?
Okay. Well, as you say, we have the main account, which is on Twitter. That's The Student Sect. As our Twitter handle. That you can get our lead writer or managing editor is Matt Zemek, Section MZ on Twitter, and of course my handle is Section TPJ, and our other co-editor is Bart Doan. He is the Coach Bart because he's a heck of a football writer, but he's also a heck of a basketball coach. So, and as you say, you can also follow us. We have on Facebook, we have a page, the student section. We usually make it a point to put all of our work out there. We're very interactive, so if you have a comment about something we're going to write, trust me, Kevin Causey, who mans our Facebook page, will absolutely respond. He does a real good job of keeping it updated. And then, of course, you can go to our site, which is blogwin.com /the student section.
Thank you very much, Terry. Always a pleasure having you on. You have a good night now, yeah?
Yes, sir. You guys take good care. Talk to you soon.
Have a great night.
And that was Terry P. Johnson from the student section talking some college football. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the night's just about done here in the lab. A great beginning to a new era in media networks, as the Inscriber Media Network has now been opened to your homes, open to the masses. Again, we have 7 shows on 7 nights. Sundays we have the East Lake Sports Show with Andrew Marchetti and Craig Goldberger. Mondays we have East versus West Sports with Robert D. Cobb, who happens to be the head of the Inscriber magazine, and the sports contestant Alyssa Michelle. Tuesdays we have Shannon Coyne doing her show Shantasy Sports. Wednesdays we have Adam Smithbarger putting together a great group to give you his show. No title as of yet, but it's going to be pop culture, movies, music, you name it. It's going to be a nice little hodgepodge of a cornucopia, as they would say, of information to give to the masses. Then, of course, on Thursday, Fantasy Jam with Andrew Fishbane and Chad Tara. Fridays, the NFL Draft Insiders with Oren Shiri and Chris Ransom. And, of course, Saturday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific Time, right here on the Inscriber Media Network, the Mad Scientist Sports Lab with yours truly, the Mad Scientist, Nick Piccarelli, as well as the apprentice, Andrew Glukov. Well, Drew, I'm all talked out, man. This was a great, great show, I have to tell you.
Man, I'm so jazzed, I can do another 2 hours worth. I'm just jazzed.
That's awesome. If you can do 2 more hours, more power to you, because the beacons are now being turned down. The experiments are being erased and being ready for next week. We will have more test subjects. But before I go, besides here on our new home, the Inscriber Media Network, you can listen to the Mad Scientist Sports Lab on other shows that love to syndicate. For example, I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network with Bobby Galante, War Room Sports with Devin McMillan and B. Austin, Happy Hour Network with Lee Vowell and Ted Hicks, The Arena Sports Network led by the Snowman, Brian Snow, Die Hard Sports Radio from Steve Itzkowitz, who you heard from earlier tonight, Sports for Fans with Sean Stewart, The Sports Crave with Noah Miller and Mike Guido, Nuts and Bolts Sports with Joey Nuts and Bolts, Late Night Sports Radio with Keith Green, and of course, Asylum Sports Network with the Ricks, Bleeger, and Briggs. So not only you can hear us here, you can hear us there, you can hear us everywhere. It doesn't matter. We know you guys love to hear this show. We thank you for allowing us to come into your homes. My name is Nick Ficcarelli. I am the mad scientist of sports. That is Andrew Glodkov. He is the apprentice. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Have a good night, and we will talk to you next week. 10 p.m. Until then, thank you very much. Drew!
Have a great night, everyone.